thank especially the folks who have come today to speak on this issue, our supporters, our members of the coalition. And I'd like to just recognize some of the folks who are with us here today. So first, I want to recognize Senator Josh Miller, who is the primary sponsor of the legislation in the Senate to regulate and tax marijuana. So Senator Miller, thank you so much for being here. Representative Scott Slater, who is the House sponsor of that legislation as well. So our two big champions that have really been fighting the fight for a number of years. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done. I'd like to recognize Jim Vincent as well from the NAACP. He's a co-chair of Regulate Rhode Island, as well as Dr. James Crowley, who's here with us as a co-chair, and Professor Andrew Horwitz, who's here as well as our co-chair. A few other folks who are here with us today: Michelle McKenzie. Where are you, Michelle? Public health researcher and amazing advocate for folks in recovery. Elizabeth Comrie is here. She's a former Providence police officer, a good friend of mine, and a member of Law Enforcement Action Partnership, which is a national organization. Catherine Duckworth, thank you so much for being here as well. She's the president of Brown University Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Rebecca Nieves McGoldrick is here representing Protect Families First, which does amazing work. Pat Ford from the Libertarian Party, thank you for being here, Pat. James Restivo here from the Sierra Club, which is a coalition partner. Steve Brown from the ACLU, thank you, Steve, for being here, really appreciate it. And Michael Beauregard, president of Young Democrats of Rhode Island. So just want to say thanks so much to all of you for being here. And the reason we're here is because regulating and taxing marijuana is the smart and responsible policy from a public health and safety perspective. And we wanted to present this report to provide the data, the research, the studies that back up that claim. We also believe that regulating and taxing marijuana this year in 2017 is the smart and responsible policy from an economic and fiscal perspective. The reality is that Massachusetts will be opening stores in 2018. Although the legislature has delayed that process by 6 months, it fundamentally doesn't change the dynamic. There will be stores most likely opening right along the border in places like Fall River, New Bedford, Attleboro, etc. And if Rhode Island does not act, then residents from Rhode Island will simply cross over and contribute millions of dollars to Massachusetts' tax base and create hundreds of jobs for their economy as well. If we do nothing this year in Rhode Island, we accomplish nothing. And so our message is that we believe that this is the responsible public policy, that this is going to make our residents safer, that it's going to better protect youth, and it's going to end a policy that's been racially disproportionately enforced. And we think it's the smart policy in terms of expanding the economy and generating much needed revenue. And that's why we're here today. So for those who are watching the news, Massachusetts is moving forward. Just yesterday, the legislative committee met to discuss the rollout of implementation. The treasurer, who's going to oversee that process, has said that they are prepared to begin implementing and setting up this regulated system. So anyone who thinks that Massachusetts isn't moving forward isn't paying attention. So with that, I want to invite some speakers here today to talk about different aspects of the report and also from their perspective why they think 2017 is the year for Rhode Island to move forward on this policy. So first, I'd like to recognize Senator Miller, who again is the primary sponsor of the legislation in the Senate. Thank you, Senator Miller.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for showing up on this. Thank you. As Jared said, I'm Senator Josh Miller. I've been the primary sponsor on the Senate side for this legislation for several years, and we actually did a study on prohibition of marijuana in 2010, 2011. So this is well-established policy that the State House has debated for several years now. We have done our homework, and this report further proves it. The overwhelming data and evidence contained in the report should give every legislator the confidence we need to move forward. With roughly 3 months left in the legislative session, it is time for us in this building to agree that now is the time to regulate marijuana. We can and must have serious discussions on how this should be done, and we believe our legislator serves as an excellent starting, this legislation that we're proposing this year is an excellent starting point. But we should no longer be bogged down on the question of this is the year to do it. So it's not a matter of how. It is a matter of how, but it's not a matter of when. Even opponents agree that legal marijuana is inevitable, and we see the dominoes of marijuana prohibition falling in more and more states. Connecticut is seriously deliberating it. Vermont will probably seriously deliberate it and probably pass it this year. Maine has, Massachusetts has, as Jared explained. There's no reason to delay in Rhode Island while other neighboring states move forward. Regulation is clearly the smart and responsible policy from a public health and safety perspective, and poll after polls suggest that a significant majority of our constituents are unhappy with our current policy, both locally, nationally, and otherwise, and in the states it's passed, obviously, that there is a clear majority. And we believe, and Scott may go over this also, that we have a clear majority if it's brought to the floor in both the Senate and the House to get this passed. It simply doesn't make sense to continue along the same path we've been on while other states move forward. I urge everyone to take a look at this report and join us in our effort to adopt a more sensible marijuana law this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Miller. First, before I get started, I would just like to show everyone this report that was done. I hope everyone takes the time to read it. Thank you, Jared, Regulate Rhode Island, for the comprehensive analysis and putting together this information that's all fact-based and debunks a lot of the arguments against tax and regulate. So thank you for all your continued efforts. Thank you to everyone behind me and in front of me that have stayed committed to creating a better public policy in a Rhode Island where I would like to live and raise my kids, because tax and regulated marijuana, I think, is the best way to go, and I think it provides a much safer environment than what prohibition has provided to us in the failed policy of prohibition. So, good afternoon, everyone. And I am Representative Scott Slater, and I am the primary House sponsor of House Bill 5555, which would legalize marijuana for adults and establish a responsible system to regulate the sale and production of marijuana similar to alcohol. I would urge each and every one of my colleagues in this building to read this report. It lays out a tremendous amount of data and evidence and shows why our state would be wise to end prohibition this year. Our current policy only puts Rhode Islanders in harm's way while regulating and taxing marijuana, and would create better safeguards, significantly reduce the illegal drug market, and provide a source of much-needed revenue. Almost every question I get from my colleagues is addressed in this report. So I hope that legislators will use this as a resource and make informed decisions. We have significant data to make this decision, and if we do not act, our neighbor to the north will be thrilled, since that will mean more business, more investment, more revenue, and more opportunity for their residents. Now is the time to act, and